Some of the big gifts get the biggest news, but they happen with a lot of communication and stewardship in between. Hi, I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. This is the first day from the fundraising school, and we're joined today by John Zeller. John has served in a wide range of senior leadership positions in fundraising, most recently as Senior Vice President of Advancement and Alumni Relations at the University of Pennsylvania. And John, thanks so much for being willing to share your wisdom with us here on the first day from the fundraising school.
Bill, it's a delight to be with you.
And again, it is no overstatement to say you literally have raised billions of dollars in your remarkable career. And those big gifts get all of the headlines, but it's almost like that's the icing on the top of the cake. We don't see the rest of the cake and all the ingredients that went into that, including the way that you've cultivated relationships and had donor stewardship over time. What advice do you have for fundraisers as they're thinking about major gift donors at any size relative to their own nonprofit as they're on that cultivation journey with their donors?
Well, Bill, it's an interesting question. One of the elements that I'm most proud of in both campaigns that I ran at the University of Pennsylvania were 25 to 30% of the gifts that came in that achieved that 4.4 or 4.5 billion or 5.4 billion in the second campaign came from donors less than $50,000. So yes, the publicity focuses on those transformative gifts at the top of the gift pyramid, but it's the work, I think, with annual giving and cultivation and stewardship of donors who are maybe putting their toe in the philanthropic water for the first time and making them feel welcome and not overshadowed by those larger gifts. We spent a lot of time focusing on engaging individuals in both campaigns. And if I might take a moment to put that a little bit in context. When I came to Penn in 2005, one of the things that I heard repeatedly was, I only hear from you when you're asking for money. And this is something I think anybody in the nonprofit world has heard at some point in time. And the president of the university, when she came at her inaugural speech in 2004, October, she laid out what she called the Penn Compact. And the Penn Compact had three elements to it. It was called access, integration of knowledge, and engaging locally and globally. Now, from building a campaign around that gave us a framework that we could literally almost do anything with. But we took the engaging locally and globally, which was really, in her mind, moving out, being present in the community, being present on a global platform, to focus on engaging individuals at all levels, and which meant that they didn't necessarily have to make a gift to be part of the campaign. And that was a really key message. Internally, we called it non-financial objectives. We tracked people who came, we recruited volunteers, we formed a number of committees, and we allowed people to participate without having to write a big check to be part of that. No question, we asked people to make an annual gift if they would, but we saw over the course of time, by bringing people in and giving them formal roles, and I can speak to that if you'd like, they felt part of the process, not kind of the end game of, oh, we want to raise money from you, but they felt part of the fabric of the institution, and it really served us well. During the major downturn in 2008, we just had kicked off our campaign when that happened. And New York is one of our larger markets, and it just was devastated. We all remember with Lehman Brothers and others when they all went under. And this engagement strategy really served us well. We would go to New York and talk to people and say, I'm not here to talk about a gift. I'm here to talk about what can we do to help you. And people really remembered that.
So 7- and 8-figure gifts get the headlines, but as John mentioned, so many of the gifts and campaigns came $50,000 or less. And that came from building a comprehensive fundraising strategy, a strong annual fund, reaching out and providing opportunities for engagement. And John, you said something about formal roles. What kind of formal roles were you inviting these prospective donors to hold?
So first of all, we created a series of advisory groups. And over the course of both campaigns, we had over 32,000 volunteers involved with the institution. And the formal role was that we created job descriptions, and which I could not emphasize enough, really played an important role of clarifying for the volunteer what their role was going to be, but also clarifying from our standpoint what we expected that volunteer to do, and then put term limits in. And we found the response to that significant, and people really took them very seriously. And we had probably 25 or 30 different volunteer kinds of opportunities, to the point where we literally put up on the website a volunteer portal that you could go down through and look and see what they might be. And they weren't only in Philadelphia, they were globally. So the alumni clubs. And I guess my point here would be for any size organization, particularly in today's environment, including volunteers really gives you additional horsepower, human resources to help either convey the message or do the work. And if you clarify that up front, you can have a very rewarding experience with a large number of volunteers.
And just to amplify John's remarkable wisdom there, some of the research that we teach in our major gifts course is that people who volunteer, as John mentioned, you add people who can do the work, who can advocate, who can use their networks to spread the word, and people who are volunteers who are treated well, 80% of them are likely to become donors. And when we think about major gifts, our high net worth donors are much more likely to volunteer than the American average. More than half of higher net worth donors will volunteer. It's about 25% for the population at large. So again, lots of good reasons through these formal ways for people to volunteer. And John, I know I want to talk about stewardship, but while we're together, I have to ask you this question. We get this question all the time in class, and we pride ourselves on research, as you know, at the School of Philanthropy and at the fundraising school. And people will raise their hand, newer to major gift fundraising, and they'll say, but how do I know when to make the ask? What is the time? I get it on identification, qualification, love all the cultivation meetings. I'll even steward after the gift. But how do I know when to make the ask? How did you develop that skill throughout your career? And what advice do you have for the rest of us?
So there are 8 questions, Bill, that I would use in major gift fundraising. Starts with capacity. You could do a lot of things, but you can't make somebody wealthier. What is their interest? You see all the time and you hear, oh, somebody made a really huge gift to another institution. We do the same kind of work. Well, you now maybe know what their interest is. But the third question is, what's the relationship? Do we know this person? Do volunteers know this person? And would they be philanthropically inclined to our organization? So once I've answered those, then I would look at the next 4 questions. And these are specific to the gift. What's the area that we're going to ask for? What's the amount? What's the timing, to your point? And the 4th question, only if it's relevant, is what might be the asset? Is somebody just selling their company? Is somebody, having a windfall, an IPO, any number of things? But the timing really is, can you answer all of those questions leading up to it? And if you can, then I always found the timing was ask, and don't hesitate going in. They'll tell you if the timing is wrong. But if you've done your homework and done all those other questions and answered them fully, this should come as no surprise to the donor.
I'm, kind of in my mind thinking almost like a weather forecast. We're going to have this kind of a condition and that kind of a condition and this other kind of condition. And therefore, the sum total is, here's our weather for today. You're saying, here are these 8 factors we're taking a look at. And if we're seeing some good flashing green lights on most, if not all of them, the time has arrived to make the ask. And you talked about when you joined Penn in 2005, and I know this is what led you and I to first come together in conversation, where donors were saying to you, I make the gift and I don't hear from Penn. again until it's time to make the next gift. I mean, I know, like you, it aches my heart when we hear donors say that. How did you operationalize that, John? How did you start putting strategies into place while you're in these multi-billion-dollar campaigns to put processes in place to ensure that stewardship would now be part of the comprehensive fundraising activities at the university?
Well, Bill, we built them around the core priorities. So let's take undergraduate financial aid, one of the highest priorities of both campaigns. We ended up raising almost $900 million for undergraduate aid. And there was an entry point at 125,000. But what you did is you assigned a student to that individual. Now, they might have more than one donor on that endowment because it only spun off 5%. But the student, we would take the profile of the student and send that to the donor. And then what we wanted to do is have individual stewardship, which we were doing by showing how much the endowment gave off, what it was used for, what the student who had it and where they came from and their major. But we said, we want to do some type of a larger stewardship event where you have the collective energy of all the donors in one room with students. So we did these scholarship receptions, one on campus and one in New York. And we would get between 600 and 700 donors to show up for this event. It was a reception. We would take the students if they were available, and we would let the donor, if they were going to be there, and match them up and let the student and the donor dynamic take its own course. And invariably, at the end of the event, we would have donors who would come to us and say, "Oh my God, I got to do more. This is just spectacular." And so we try to do that the same way with research by taking faculty on the road, bringing donors and interested individuals into a room. We called it Engaging Minds. And we found that students or alumni and friends had this hunger for knowledge, to be able to be in front of some of the world's brightest researchers and listen to them talk about it. And you'd do it over lunch. We'd have 1,100, 1,200 people in New York. We took it on the road, did it in San Francisco, LA. So I guess the takeaway, I mean, that scale is bigger than most nonprofits. But the takeaway, I think, is if you can create an environment where you can bring your donors, however many that might be. It might be a luncheon, it might be a dinner, it might be a reception, or just a meeting, to bring the recipient of whatever their philanthropy is or was to the table and let them tell the story of impact. Donors we found they just loved it.
Helping those donors engage with the nonprofit, with the program staff, or the researchers in John's context, or those program participants, be they students or anybody engaged with your program. And John, as I'm gathering and learning from your wisdom here, again, one of the thoughts I had was you gave us good operationalized steps for donor stewardship, but that the first thing is you put together donor stewardship because you decided to.
Yes.
Right. And it in some ways, stewardship is an attitude. It's a philosophy. It's a mindset to make sure we're including this in our long-term relationship with the donor, and then do these operational things as you so described.
You can never say thank you enough. And, if you look at the giving cycle, from identification through asking and closing the gift, it ends with stewardship and then comes back to gifts. As you pointed out earlier, good stewardship leads to future philanthropic support.
John, as we conclude our conversation here today, I would be remiss not to ask you, and again, guys like you don't really retire, so I don't want to hear about retirement. And as we say in the Polish, 100 lat, may we live 100 years. But since you have this extensive career, you saw the changes, right? And I'm willing to just call myself out. I typed up my undergraduate papers on a manual typewriter, okay? And you saw changes throughout your career in terms of methods and technologies, and now there's social media, and now we have to have websites, and all these changes that you saw happen throughout your career. What were some of the similar threads that you saw, regardless of the new technologies, regardless of the new techniques? And to kind of put that in advice for today's fundraisers, as they're now encountering artificial intelligence and fundraising, and even more and more donors, including our boomer generation, making donations through their phones and things of that nature. You've seen that evolution of fundraising over the decades. What lessons would you share? What advice would you have for today's fundraisers as they're encountering that ever-evolving landscape?
Well, I mean, as you point out, and I did all my papers on a manual typewriter, and I remember the first time I had a DEC computer, Digital Equipment Corporation computer, where you could actually put discs in and generate letters and do any number of things. The piece that because technology is changing so fast, I am a data wonk. I really, really believe in data, current, dynamic, to tell you what's happening with your constituency. And this new technology allows us so many ways to capture the points of entry, what the donor might be looking at, and do some analysis on that. And to me, good, solid research and data analysis will guide you as to where you need to go. It changes too fast.
Be as empirical, as objective as you possibly can be while doing that qualitative work of building relationships with our donors. John, thank you so much. I'm humbled that you would share your considerable expertise, informed by experience and successful practice, one of the giants in our field. Thank you so much for being with us on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
Bill, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
We do our best to honor the work of folks like John, whose shoulders we stand on, and help you advance forward with the latest techniques and technologies in our 25 public courses. We're in 10 U.S. cities and, of course, anywhere around the world online. We can customize training just for your nonprofit, your association, your region, your country, your culture, whatever the case might be. We can do that in person and online as well. We have quarterly webinars, these weekly podcasts, our knowledge gathered up in our textbook, the 5th edition of Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, all on our website at go.iu.edu/TFRS for the Fundraising School. Grateful for our guest today, John Zeller, and a podcast produced by the Emmy Award winner, Mike Anthony, and by my colleague, Jennifer Boffman, CFRM. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. You are now more fully informed on this first day from the Fundraising School.